Today, we begin and end our session with 2 guided meditations by our guest, TBN. Thank you for sharing your gifts with us.
Welcome. Where are you? Where are you right now? Let's start in your toes. How can your toes become your home? Can they reach deep into the ground with mud between them? Can you bathe them in black walnuts to calm? How can you make the soles of your feet home? What stories do they have to tell about your path? Reach your toes out, spread them. Feel the top half of your foot. Notice all the muscles. How can your feet be home? It's time to notice your heels. How do your heels support you? How are your heels part of your foundation? What do your heels want to tell you about where you've come from? What do you feel in your heels? Down the center of your foot, from your heel to your big toe. Imagine the most skilled, old, wrinkled black hands rubbing and following this line from your heel to your big toe. What is released here? What do you notice? Those same grandmother black hands bend all of your toes backwards. What do you feel in your heels? What do you feel as those hands bend the toes toward your nose? What do you feel in the soles of your feet? How are your feet home? Spread your toes out again. Imagine your feet in the dirt. What memories arise? Have you ever let your bare feet be in the dirt? Wiggle your toes. Let the wiggle go all the way down to your heels. What warmth surrounds your feet? Are your feet cold? Are they seeking your attention? Are your feet rough? What are your feet holding? What do the grandma hands have to tell you about your feet? Deep breath in and out.
Tyrell Blacquemoss, or TBN, or Queen Fire Breath, is a prophetic dream worker and descendant of a long line of African priests and workers and Turtle Island medicine people. As a scholarly researcher with a Bachelor's of Fine Art with an emphasis in Africana Studies and Indigenous Studies from Cornell University, TBN reclaims and continues their family legacy of the science and art of dreaming. TBN is a certified in Usui. Usui. I did it again. Usui?
Usui.
Usui. I'm keeping that. It's all right to make mistakes. Usui Reiki 2, a trained community herbalist specializing in mental, emotional health, and dreams, with ancestral licenses in dream work, elemental healing, bone divination, and is a gifted seer, Sangoma Gobela initiate in training to teach others to become a South African traditional healer and future doctor of acupuncture. TBN has volunteered in advocacy and organizing work for survivors of domestic violence and abuse. In addition to their work for others, their practice is very personal and has supported them through battles with mental health, PTSD symptoms, recovery from domestic violence, and 18 months of homelessness. They are a 2019 to 2020 fellow in Freedom School's National Health and Healing Justice Fellowship. TBN is currently based in Flagstaff, Arizona, in quarantine in the desert, seeking birth worker training and beginning an MFA candidacy at Prescott College in social and environmental arts practice with Patrice Colors. As I read that, I am overwhelmed and in awe of how much you have done, and how you have put together space for your healing, like where you have taken and gathered your tools for healing. So welcome. welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So Queen Fire Breath. How we usually start the podcast is share your bio. Boom, did that. And then we share pronouns and the race or ethnicity.
Hey, baby. Podcast recording. Do you have everything you need out of this room?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Love
like making sure. Now I want to meet them. Gosh darn it. So yeah, if you could go ahead and share your pronouns and the race or ethnicity you embody.
Mm-hmm. So my pronouns are they, them, and he, him. I wrote this beautiful statement in my grad school statement about my ethnicity, and I wish I had memorized it because it like really summed everything up like so nicely in a few sentences. I don't have it memorized, so I'll just, I'm gonna just say what I remember of it. So I stand on the shoulders of my African ancestors. The loudest of my African ancestors are Igbo, are Congo, and as I am initiated to ancestral groups that have been in South Africa and Southern Africa for a very long time. So the Nguni, the Nadal, and some other spirits that have lived in those lands for a long time. While I am in the United States, I am really immersed in the lands of my Afro-Native ancestors. The ones who have come forward to let me know where they're from are Choctaw, Cherokee, Creek, and Blackfoot. And then I am immersed in my African American cultural heritage, specifically with Southern roots in Arkansas and Mississippi. And my mom's family has been in Newark, Virginia area for a long time. And then the ways that those roots have transformed in the Midwest. Both of my parents grew up in Illinois, and I grew up in Wisconsin. So, what does African American heritage look like in the Midwest and in Wisconsin? And then I think I feel comfortable with, after all of that preface, that I am Black, and I am Black as a political understanding of who I am. But sometimes to claim Blackness does not feel as connected to the lands that my people are from. The word Blackness as like in opposition to whiteness, but there is something, there are stories of who I am that are larger than slavery, are larger than colonization. Um, yeah, I feel like that's how I would talk about my ethnicity.
Mm.
Let me not. Okay, I also have some European ancestors too. They do exist.
Yes, they do exist for a lot of us. Absolutely. It is important that when we talk about our race and ethnicity, to realize that it goes beyond the stories and the history of, you know, the American people. And so I like the way that you described that and honored that, and realized that it's such a long journey, right? There's such a long lineage. And Black, saying you're Black can be very empowering, but it can erase so much of what Black means. So thank you. I use they, them, their pronouns, and I am Black. I cannot do the breakdown like you did. That. I'm working on that. I'm figuring out what that means to me. So my ancestors, I think our ancestors are here with us today and now, and I feel them like pushing me to engage more with that and look at that. So thank you. So that being said, for our like check-in grounding question, who is surrounding you and I in this moment, and how can we honor them being here?
My first spirit, who always wants the most acknowledgement and honor, is the Nadal woman who walks with me. And the way that I honor her first is with snuff. So, like tobacco, but a particular process of tobacco, snuff. And I'm actually going to step away from the call for a second and give her some.
Yes.
She also said, "That's it. Don't name nobody else."
All right. That is fair. Like I said, I feel that, that like gentle push by my ancestors, specifically my grandmother and my great grandmother, who passed on in this lifetime. They are always with me, always on my maternal side. But today specifically, I see men and they don't usually come to me. And that's part of what I am being pushed toward looking at, is the men, and their power and their stories and their imperfections, as balance and clarity with how that all resides in me, the masculine and the feminine, and the equal accountability for both. So I honor them by noticing that they are there and letting them speak, like listening to them. They're always going to speak. I don't need to let them do anything but listening. Yeah. All right. So I'm still filling into the space right now, and I know that a lot of the language that you'll be using is going to be, it's new for me, and there's a little bit of embarrassment by me saying that, but also so much curiosity and joy that you are bringing this language into my world. And so, are there any terms that you feel people who are listening might not know, and for the sake of like describing it now so we don't have to do it later, you'll want us to know about and describe?
I think I'm going to start first with the affirmation statement that I wrote for myself.
Yeah.
To kind of like, where am I coming from when I'm answering your questions? And so the statement that I wrote for myself is, think about the questions as a poetic herbalist, like thinking of like poetry in the ways that you like put words together to describe phenomena that are like difficult to be held by words, but you put it together in a poetic way so people are like, oh, I kind of get it. So think about the questions as a poetic herbalist and someone interacting with spirituality as a technology or a system or a framework. Go slow. You're teaching, and this is a reflective healing opportunity for you as well. So in terms of definitions, I don't know what terms we're going to end up talking about. So I'm very open to define them as we go.
Yeah, it's the alchemy of now. It sounds a lot like what you're talking about. Is when you said that, it reminds me of my spell work, like casting, with the tools we have and with the tools that come to us in the moment. And with these questions and just with our conversation in general with people, there's like this automatic and natural spell work that happens with communication. And so that's what your affirmation reminded me of. Yeah.
I think the first terms that I kind of want to break down are like spell and casting, because those words connotate witchcraft, which is something that we have been taught is evil and scary, and sometimes is used for evil and scary things. I wonder, maybe we can come up together with like, what are those words mean for us? So I'll go first, and then maybe you can go after. So a spell for me. So I personally am no longer using language that moves toward witchcraft, because I am not in a place where I am interested in scaring people. And while that has been like coming into witchcraft and understanding myself as a witch or as a conjurer or as someone who creates something out of nothing, and my process around reclamation of that has been very, very powerful for me. Within my temple and within my teachers' traditions in South Africa, which doesn't have a fluid connotation. It always means that you like are doing some non-consensual evil type things. And so with that global perspective, I've kind of had to like pull it out of my vocabulary a little bit because it doesn't mean the same thing everywhere. And folks are not doing the same type of reclamation work everywhere around it. And instead, they are medicine people, they are sangomas, they are people with a higher calling, things like that. Like they have different ways that they explain how they are reclaiming these ancient traditions. And then I think about like what does it mean to to cast is to have something come forth, have something come out of. And so folks can cast when they are cooking, they can do spell work when they're cooking, when they're singing, when they are breathing, and thinking about the ways that we create the things that we need for ourselves, the frameworks, the infrastructure, the nutrients, the nourishment, all of those things come from us. So it's like creating a spell is like creating your life as art. So it's not necessarily something scary. It's actually something very beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything you want to add?
So I definitely resonate with what you're saying about spells and casting. And when it comes to me using the term witch, I am still feeling into if that's what I still want to be, what I still want to be called. But for me, it's when I say witch and I say it out loud, I feel as if, not as if, I hold space for all of the gross things that have been done to women and healers, and people who have been tortured, because people fear what they do not understand. And for me, it's a reclaiming of that word. However, when I say reclaiming, I'm now starting to understand that like you were saying, like the word witch itself might not be for me to reclaim. That might be for more European centered witches and healers. And I don't know what word I want to use now. But for right now, which is like a nice placeholder while I explore and like feel into that. And as for spells and casting, it really is a very beautiful thing. And I don't think that people realize we do it every day. Like when we cook, our intention might not be to get certain like energetic things from the food, but the idea of nourishing our body for the sake of living, and warmth, and doing what we need to take care of the different necessities our body is calling us to pay attention to, is all about spells. It's just the language we use around it is different, and people can make what they will of that language. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. And yeah, this conversation already is, yeah, it's making space for me to think outside and like question so much that I don't always get to question out loud. Yeah, absolutely. So in one of your videos, you use the phrases, "your breath is medicine" and "remember the body as ceremony." Can you speak to what that means and like say a little bit more about it?
So I think, you know, the definitions around casting and spells is a really nice entryway into your breath as medicine. So if we think about the breath on a scientific level of, you know, our body's way of functioning to stay alive, and the expelling of taking in of oxygen and expelling of carbon dioxide, that's medicine. It is a function of our body to keep us well, to keep us alive, to sustain us. If we also think of, you know, the words that we're saying and what's coming out of our mouth, we need breath to have words come out of our mouth. And if we think of, you know, the songs that we sing, the words that we speak, the recipes that we give to others, all of those things are medicine. So maybe replacing the word spell with medicine. This is something that keeps us well. This is something that sustains us, sustains our communities, nourishes us. And if our body, you know, that is holding the breath and allowing the breath to continue, is this vessel for this medicine. So if our body is a medicine cabinet, if our body is a sacred temple, how can we start to remember the body as ceremony? If ceremony is this way of moving in the world that is handing out medicine to other people, how do we care for the body in a way that is sacred, in a way that is a ritual? Like, how do we make sure that we have protocols and steps in place of how we are moving through the day? How are we waking up? Like, the way that we wake up, how does it impact the whole rest of our day, the tone of voice that we're using with others, you know, how quickly we move to anger, how quickly we move to grace. How do we end the day? How do we reflect on what has happened so that tomorrow can go in a better way, in a good way? So how are we thinking about the care of the body from the beginning of the day to the end of the day as ceremony, as a gift, as medicine for ourselves and also for all of the people who interact with us throughout the day? So that's what I'll be saying when I
uh, you spit so much like wisdom and truth, and you're like, and then this is it. Yeah, like I'm telling y'all. The words that come to mind are, well, one of the words is like prana. When you were talking about how our words have power, and this vessel, like our body, is this cabinet of medicine, and what we produce out of it is medicine. And it also reminds me of what we're putting back into it. The idea of like you can't have an exhale and this creative flow outward without taking some in. And what are we putting into our body? What are we putting into our cabinet? What are the tools we're allowing to enter our body? And how do we take care of the cabinet? There's so much receiving and giving that comes in both those sayings, that I think we have been taught to ignore in order to survive. And survival isn't about thriving and isn't in the long term. Survival is about the now, now, now. And there's just such a great loss and a sadness but also like possibility with your words of what we can create.
Yeah, I think for me that stepping into the abundance of possibility of like, oh, I can rest, and oh, I'm medicine, I think there absolutely is a grief to be experienced in that, especially if, you've lived for so long, up until however many days old you are today, you've lived for that long and you didn't know that, and no one has ever told you that. That's a lot of time to grieve. Like, wow, I could have been moving in this way. I could have blocked off some other things that people told me. If I had understood this from day one, like, who would I even be if I had understood this from day one? And grieving, like, who you could have been, or who we could have been for all of that time. And like I said at the beginning, like, I grew up in Wisconsin. Like, I didn't know none of this growing up, none of this. Like, I was not connected to any of my ancestral lineages, like, all of my friends were white people, because that's what it is in Wisconsin. It's mostly white people. And then I wanted to, so kind of like, as I was listening to you talk, I was thinking about how to also think about this medicine cabinet that may have, pharmaceuticals in it. It may also have like toxins in it. It may also have like it may also have addictions in it. It may have like, other people's karma, other people's stuff in our medicine cabinets. And what do we do to, clean it out? Like, how do we create cycles of, every spring we get rid of this, we do our spring cleaning? Like, in the South, where it's much more likely to have parasites because of the amount of water there and the ways that the animals just be like getting up all in things, and people have parasites like regularly. And so herbalists in the South will, create protocols for a spring cleaning that like gets parasites out. And so, and that in a lot of African traditional religions and a lot of indigenous practices have regular cleanings. There are Olympias, there are spiritual baths. Like, you regularly clean, you keep your house very, very, very clean, as a way to, ward off some of that stuff. Like, and I don't think it's necessarily bad to have things in your medicine cabinet that are not supporting you, but you can be responsive to that and create cycles of cleaning things out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's catharsis with the holding the grief, but then realizing that from now on you have a choice. And also with the cleaning, that's also very cathartic, and leaves so much space for, other possibilities, like you were saying. It's beautiful the way that you look at that. Yeah. I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much. Yeah. So you, with your own journey, growing up in Wisconsin, what has connecting with your ancestors look like? And what were some of the moments where it felt like home?
Well, let me start with some context. So, like I said earlier, I married a white person, a white trans femme. We were married. It was not that cute.
When you switch in and out, it gets me every time. Okay. All right.
And okay, so I think that some of my journey back to my ancestors, it's more, stronger, started in 2015. So 2015 was the year. So growing up in Wisconsin, I also had a lot of mental health diagnoses, and I had a lot of skin irritations and a lot of like gut issues. Now I know that many of those things are considered a healer's sickness, and they are signs that you need to be initiated. I didn't know that. So, I was just walking around really ill for a long time. And so in 2015, I decided that I didn't want to take any pharmaceuticals anymore, that, the symptoms were like feeling worse or like, contributing to like just like me not feeling like anything, just feeling like grimy and like not really able to like express emotions very well. I was always in a lot of pain during that time of my life. So I like really couldn't dance. Like singing was really hard. It was really hard to perform. Anxiety was wild off the charts. Just, it was like really hard to function in the world. And I was like in college at the time too. And like in some domestic violence and stuff. It was like a lot. It was a very, very difficult time. And so I was like, all right, let me stop these pharmaceuticals. And then very shortly after this, I found this beautiful teacher named Amanda David, this Black herbalist in upstate New York who has, studied with like really incredible herbalists. She studied with Susan Weed, which is a famous herbalist. She interned at Herb Farm, those tinctures that you can get at the grocery store. She interned there. And then she raised her 3 children, using herbal medicine, and continued learning and continued teaching. And she now has a beautiful, beautiful herb shop in upstate New York, and also has her own separate business, Rootwork Herbals, where she, teaches people about how to be community herbalists and like returning the people's medicine to them. So I started studying with her, and I apprenticed with her for 3 years. And so my first introduction back to my ancestors was through the plants. Like that's what they started with. And, this teacher who I connected with wasn't super, super spiritual. Like she is, but she doesn't talk about it. That's not the first thing she talks about. She talks about herbs in this way where they're your friends and your allies and your buddies. But she also really wants folks to be aware of like the clinical uses of the herbs. And so she's like, a little bit talking about body systems, and she's talking about like your body as a receptacle for receiving information that the plants have to share, stories that the plants have collected over time, and the ways that your body can, as you tune it and learn how to use it, your body can tell you what the plant does. So it was a really beautiful time learning from her, and that really opened up so much for me. That was like when I was first interacting with the word witch. One of the other apprentices, we were having this conversation one day, and I was like, do you know any witches? And the other apprentice was like, well, what do you mean? Who's from New York City and descendant of Haitians. And so the other apprentice was like, well, what do you mean by witch? And I was like, I don't know, just somebody who's a witch. And the other apprentice was like, well, I don't know if Amanda uses that word, but I like think of her, as a witch. Like, she'd be brewing her herbs and, making stuff for the community. And she also at the time was like living in this like wood cabin, like outside of town. So like, and I was like, oh, I'm working with witches. Okay. Yeah. So the plants were like the first introduction. And, as time went on, I was like, oh, my mama was always making me teas growing up. When they had time and ability to, there was always a garden in the backyard. When I had really wild cramps, my mom was giving me traditional Chinese medicine herbs. I don't even know how she found that stuff, but that's what she was giving me. So I think the plants was the first like breath of air. And I remember this one time. So during the summertime, so the I was learning with this teacher in upstate New York. So, there's winter time and winter is long. But during the summertime, she would bring us outside and we would have these like farm immersion days, and we would learn about 3 different plants during these farm immersion days. And one of the days where we were learning how to make flower essences, and flower essences is like much more energetic and less clinical and less on the physical level than most of the other herbal preparations that we make during those types of classes. They're very like, the body. And she really wasn't sold on flower essences like either. And so she was like giving us the information, but also like working through being convinced about how effective they are to people's emotional and spiritual states. And so I went and sat with tobacco. And I I was like, oh, okay, I'll just go sit with tobacco, and a lot of the plants that Amanda teaches are like very gentle herbs, herbs that are safe for children, herbs that are like very, very abundant, aka weeds like dandelion, plantain, violet. Like those are the first plants that we learn. And so I went and sat with a tobacco, which tobacco, that's not, that's not none of them.
That's not gentle. No.
So I go and sit with this tobacco, and I could hear my great grandmother, and I'm like, whoa. And and my great grandmother also died from lung cancer, from smoking cigarettes. And so I'm like sitting next to this tobacco with these like yellow flowers with my little bowl of water, and I had to lay down because the energy was just so heavy. It was so heavy. My grandma is like telling me about the ways that like tobacco moves pain in the body, and that you don't always have to burn it. Sometimes you can use it with water. And like I had said, I was in incredible pain during like this time of my life, like all the time. And, still walked around and like I wasn't in pain, but I was in horrible pain. And she was like, helping me with like the ways that my knees were aching and like moving the flowers over. And I was like, wow, my knee is feeling better. And like, I didn't take anything. I just put these little flowers in the water on my knee, and my knee is literally feeling better. And, she told me some other stories that were, specific to our family. And, and I really haven't even like sat down and talked to my mom about this, and like that grandmother, was a really big part of, the person the team of people who raised my mother. And I didn't know her very well, while she was living. And then we all came back together in this herb class on the farm to like share what were the different findings from the plants that we each sat with. And I couldn't even talk. I was just like so overwhelmed. I just needed to lay down. People were like, okay, well, you're over there laying down. So is that like part of what you got from it? You feel sleepy? And I was like, yeah, I do feel sleepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have more you want to share before I ask questions about your story?
I feel like that's a good stopping place. What are your questions?
Okay. So now I forgot them that quick. Well, first of all, the bowl with the flower, was that like a part of connecting with the plant? Because flower essences are some of the most powerful ways of connecting with plants that I've found for myself. But with the bowl with the yellow flowers in it, can you tell us more about what that was? Because I'm
so that was the process of. Oh, my foot fell asleep. That was so that was the process of making them. So we would go, and because there is the way that my teacher was teaching about them, there is, and because of her own suspicions about the efficacy of flower essences, like she was like, okay, so when you're not sure, about what But when you're not sure about what someone is telling you about something, go and do your own research. So part of the plant sit was us doing our own research and us together seeing like what we experience from the plant, and is that, you know, in alignment with what we read on the page, or is it different, is it similar, etc. And so the first step of making the flower essence is to go and sit with the plant, you know, with the bowl of water, and then to put the flowers in the bowl of water without taking it off of the plant, like just letting it sit. So that's another great thing about flower essences, is you're not actually killing the plant. You're just like putting it in a bowl of water. During that particular moment, she felt called to let the flowers sit in the bowl of water underneath the moon. So she left them there overnight, and whatever, I don't remember if it was a full moon or it was a new moon or what, but whatever was going on with the moon, she felt called to like leave them sit. And then after you leave them sit, then there is some proportions that you do with brandy of the like water that is charged with the flower essence, the essence of the flower. And then you can look these recipes up. They're online about what the proportions are, but you use brandy and then you dilute it even further. And like the further you dilute it, that's like the dropper bottle that you use to like ingest the flower essence, to use the flower essence. I would love to hear more about your experience of them being like the strongest, like that. It's still, that's who my teacher is, so that's where my foundations are, and I'm always like it's very wow to me when people are like, oh yeah, flower essence, that's the one.
So with flower essence, wait, so all right, like how do you feel about flower essence now? Just so we
I feel that it is a breaking down of ideas of patriarchy that make me believe that flowers are something feminine and therefore something weak, which is like not even like scientifically accurate, the amount of energy that it takes for a plant to produce a flower. And when a plant is producing a flower, whatever the medicinal properties of that plant are, and they're producing a flower, it is super concentrated in that flower. And the plant had to do all of this labor to make that flower. Therefore, there's even more medicine in that flower. So flowers are potent as fuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The best way to describe it is how it feels in my body when I'm taking it in. So one of the first ones I worked with, I have oh my gosh, I forgot which. So the strongest one that is coming to mind, and that's why I did that post about asking about BIPOC apothecaries, is Ocotillo. Ocotillo is, when I first started working with Ocotillo, it felt like this almost like steady and quiet drum beat in like my sacral center, and it felt as though like as the beat started to resonate and I noticed it more, it loosened up so many words and feelings that I had compacted and buried deep, and allowed it to stir up and come out. And that was it was subtle and but very grounding and very powerful. Like it like, I don't know how to describe it, but subtle and powerful at the same time. And I dig what you're saying about like the shaking up or like dismantling of patriarchy behind flowers, because I never thought about flower essences as being this weak thing, or like this thing like, oh, this is a pretty flower, kind of, I don't know, diddly doo dah day with it. But for me, it's this very like deep, like underground, like water system type energy, you know, like you have to really be still and be in tune to feel it. But when you feel it, you really feel it, and the power of it flowing, like listening to the earth's heartbeat.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful and so in tune. It's funny that Akatil is the plant. I was like, that's the fucking desert medicine. Like that ain't like
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, have you seen an Akatil in person? Like them shit. Like, have you seen an Akatil though? For real? Have you seen one?
Not in person, which I would love to. Like just
So
sit with it.
Akatil in person, for those who have not seen, an Akatil looks like very thin octopus tentacles growing up off the ground with like 2-inch spikes coming off of it all over.
Yeah, it's like I've seen it in pictures, and it's like I'm here.
And to harvest Akatil flowers, so Akatil grows straight up, I believe, as it is dying. So Akatil is like, it's a mother, like a mother in the desert. So in creosote, that's another desert plant that's like super, super prevalent. In Spanish, creosote is la gobernadora, the governor, the female governor. And acatillo is another plant that grows in the desert. So it grows like straight up, has these like all these spikes on it. It's not necessarily very easy to harvest the flowers. And the acatillo has to decide that my partner thinks that as they're getting older and starting to die, that's when their branches start bending and coming down so that you can reach the flowers. But you can't always reach the flowers depending on what stage of development they're in. And and there's some desert herbalists who like could like really speak to this. I'm a new desert herbalist. I've only been out here for like 3 years, but people who have been here for years and years and years and years could like really speak to like how they've seen acatillos and how they've like interacted with them, like, over the course of like many, many years. But what I've noticed, the flowers are incredibly potent. You can put it in a glass of water, like cold water, room temperature water, and you can like taste it, and it's like this very like fruity, how you said, subtle and powerful, like fruity, subtle. It's almost has it's not an umami flavor, but it like moves like that, like it moves like deeply in your palate. And if I don't know if you've looked up like the materia medica for Akatil, but those are the body systems that it hits. Like it's really good in the like generative, sacral chakra area. I believe I was also using it for some urinary stuff when I was using it, and then also like connective paths between the sacral, the solar plexus, and as well as the throat. Like it's like it's very, very like feminine energy healing. And by feminine
like
energy, all bodies, like, it don't matter. All bodies.
Yes, all bodies. But it definitely is a mother. Like it's a mother plant. It's very strong, very powerful. So yeah, that was my experience. And I've had other experiences, but that's the one that like came to mind. And it is funny that it is a desert plant.
Yeah, it's a desert plant. Those flowers, it don't bloom all year round. Like, there has to be enough rain. Sometimes they won't bloom, If there wasn't enough rain, they're not blooming. Like, so it is a very powerful flower.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh my gosh, like I'm getting lost with my questions. But like, where are we? I'm like, oh gosh. Okay. So with diasporic dream medicine, How do you do? Actually, I'm not gonna go there yet because I feel like it'll come with other questions, like just naturally. Um, I kind of want to go into more of like putting this, what we're talking about, kind of like practicing it. So, how do we dream together and with our ancestors to heal from whiteness, patriarchy, and cis heteronormativity? You spoke a little bit about that with flower essences, but what are some other ways in which we can dream together?
So when I was reading over these questions, I was like, dang, that's what we talk about today? That's such a big
The other ones were just warm up questions. But then the warm up questions got deeper, and I was like, okay.
So that's when this is the question that really was like, okay, let me make a little intention statement. So I'm not saying I'm not talking, out the side of my mouth and saying some stupid shit or whatever. So when I was, kind of like practicing talking through this question, I was like, all right, let's break it up into some pieces, because I think because dreaming itself is so fluid. Sometimes I describe it as like holding water while you're standing upside down, being immersed in water. Like dreaming it's not something that's even easy to put words to. Um, so let's leave the dreaming for a second and like think about, okay, so we're saying heal from whiteness, heal from patriarchy, heal from cis heteronormativity. If we are healing from something, are we naming these things as illnesses? So is whiteness an illness? Is patriarchy an illness? Is cis heteronormativity an illness? Okay, if it is an illness or some type of dis-ease that we experience, what are the qualities of these illnesses, of these diseases, and what body systems do they affect, and in what ways? Like if we're trying to heal from it, let's break it down, figure out how it works, so that we know what type of support we need to pass this stuff out of us. So whiteness, I was thinking about as, and I would love to hear, if you have any thoughts about what do these illnesses look like. Because this is, I just was talking about this earlier today. I have not spent a long time thinking about these in this particular way. But I was thinking about whiteness as something that affects all of the bodies of the system. And when I say all of the systems of the body, and when I say all of the systems of the body, I mean all of the physical systems, but then I also mean the emotional body, the mental body, and the spiritual body. So if it is something that impacts all of those systems, where like when you go to an acupuncturist or another natural doctor, and if you have a lot of things going on with you, sometimes they'll ask you, where do you want to start? Like, what do you want to start working on first? And so healing from whiteness, you might pick a particular area, like something that is the most painful, something that is like impacting your movement the most, etc. And then I was thinking about patriarchy as, so someone shared for Mother's Day, someone had shared this image of, I don't remember. I wish I was like a little bit more in tune with my art history, but I'm not right now. And so it was some Greek, Roman, something, some European painting, but redone with all Black people. Maybe it's one of the Venus paintings. I feel like I should, I have an art degree. I should totally know like who painted it or whatever. I don't remember that shit. Those classes were really boring to me. It might even be like Michelangelo or something. It's somebody big. A Venus painting. Anyway, so the caption was about mother is the first god that we know. and thinking about, this is a person, whether they, use the word mother or not. This is a parent, who held me in their, with whatever they call their vessel, their womb, their pot. They held me within their body for 9 months, and then I came out of them. Of course, that's God. Of course, that's God. And if patriarchy is an illness that teaches us that that person is not God, that this person that, like, literally created us is not God, that maybe patriarchy is first an illness of the mind, because that's what would have to be changed first, is your mind about who God is. And so maybe we are figuring out ways to heal the mind, to heal from patriarchy. And maybe cis heteronormativity is an illness of hierarchies and of division and of compartmentalization, which, a lot of mental health stuff are those things, are the ways that people organize, the traumatic events that happen to them, the ways that people organize how they interact with other people, the way that people organize information that comes to them, oftentimes can result in a mental illness if we are not able to process it in a way that, like, also supports our moving in the world and interacting with other people. So, I feel like we could really deep in depth, finish naming these different illnesses, the body systems that they affect, and then, start making protocols. Like herbalists, that's what we do, is we make protocols for different disease, and then we also match them with an individual's constitution, an individual's life story, an individual's birth story. So all that stuff is a lot, on a technical level. All that stuff is a lot to figure out, how do you heal from those things. And so in dreaming, you can really compress a lot of information, and you can interact with a lot of information all at the same time. In terms of, like, if you're looking at neuroscience and I don't remember the name of the state, but there's a state that you're in right before you fall asleep. And in that state, you're able to impact your subconscious. And that's where a lot of, this mental health, like, compartmentalization happens, is within the subconscious. And so while we're dreaming, we are able to, work through some of those issues. That's why we're having dreams about, grief, about this ex that we can't get over, about, something that traumatic that happened in childhood. That's, and some people will call those things nightmares, where our subconscious is letting us know what the fuck is going on with us. Or can I swear?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, so, like, what's going on with us? So when we start to, if we're not remembering our dreams, because we're setting up another level of compartmentalization, where we don't want to know what our subconscious has to say. We don't want to know what our child self has to say, and we need that, away from us to be able to survive, to be able to wake up and go to our job, to be able to put food on the table for our children, etc. We need that compartmentalization, but if we are given space to be able to rest, because first of all, to dream, you do need to sleep. Like, you need to sleep and, like, get good sleep. You need 8 hours to be able to, like, remember your dreams. Sometimes everybody's different. And so, like, a lot of what I'm teaching is, like, from that herbalist perspective of everybody has their own constitution, everybody has their own birth story, everybody has their own individual path, of what they came here to do. And so also everybody has their own individual and specific to their lineage, the people who came before them, dream language. So in terms of, like, dream interpretation, there's never going to be, like, symbols that within people's dreams that are the same for everybody. No, like, you could have the same thing happen, but because it's somebody else's dream, it's going to mean something different because of that person's life experiences, because of the collective experiences of their ancestors. So what I am teaching people to do is I'm teaching people how to learn their dream languages so that they can access, this compressed and encrypted information that their subconscious is giving them, that their ancestors are giving them, that, if there's any spirit guides who like come through and want to like, give some information, if the landscape, if the stars, want to give some information, like let's slow it down, and also do a lot of recording. You really need to write all your dreams down so that you can start to figure out what are the patterns, what are the images that pop up on a regular basis. I noticed after 5 years that like during the fall, which is the anniversary of when so and so died, I start having dreams about balloons. And so for me, balloons are like the symbol of this ancestor, this friend of mine who died a few years ago showing up. This is like they're celebrating you, they want to like give me something as the grief is resurfacing, etc., etc. Like, there's so many things that we can heal from in our dreams, because number one, we're resting and the body needs us to rest. We have to sleep. 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 And we really need at least 8 hours. And that's on some for real serious shit. Like, we are cutting years off of our life if we are not sleeping. And like a book that really goes into the science of that is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And he has like a PhD in neuroscience and psychology or something like that. And he goes through all of these like case studies that they did of even to like get 4 or 5 hours of sleep for like 5 days. It like significantly on a scientific level impacts the way that your body is able to heal. So if you're also are thinking about layers of trauma and oppression, like, folks who are marginalized, we need 8 hours of sleep, 8 to 10 hours of sleep, like every night, like no question, every night. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Dreaming and like looking at whiteness, patriarchy, cis-heteronormativity as illnesses. For me, as someone who works with the body on like a physical level, I know that what we create in our mind manifests in our body. It's not like a separate thing. It's very much it's a whole unit. It's a whole system. And so when we feel shortness of breath, when we feel like we can't breathe, when we feel constricted, whether it be by our environment or by some type of like illness that is running through our system, we hold our body in a certain way. Our body has a wonderful way of having compensation, creating compensation patterns for us. So again, we can thrive so that we can keep going until hopefully maybe we get better, but it's trying to just get us to like from point A to point B. And when there's systemic illnesses like whiteness, I'll keep with the breath, the idea of the breath. When there are illnesses within our environment that make us feel as if we are smaller, like we cannot take up space, like we cannot breathe fully into who we are, we constrict. And when you were talking about dreaming, that like having a nightmare, I know what my body does when it's having a nightmare. For some people, it looks like clutching their chest, which again constricts the chest and makes it hard for us to breathe. For others, it's the clenching of the jaw. I do that quite a bit, which again constricts how much we can intake and outtake through the breath. All of this is something that we can notice and are symptoms of an illness. And like you were saying, I think when you say from, when you brought out that I wrote from, I think that that's key too, because I don't think it's from, I think it's through. Like what you talk about with dreaming, like making space for those nightmares, those that discomfort, and realizing that they're messages that we need to work through, and with, and what does that look like? How do we hold space for it without being so overwhelmed by it that it takes over and we constrict? And that surrender is a very hard place to find, but when you find it, whoo, child.
Yeah, and I want to say, I've had like several teachers over the years, and the teachers who, I really place as like my elders and the ones who like really helped me remember my own light and so how to not get stuck in the darkness, because like, the nightmares happen, but folks who I find to be masters at like moving energy, you see the nightmare, you notice it, and then it's got to go. Like you don't need it. You don't need to wallow in it. Like if you gotta cry for a little bit, but you don't that next, next, next. And I appreciate that. I really appreciate that I have, that my ancestors have given me teachers who are like, yeah, you burn that shit up. You don't need it. You don't even need to tell me about it. Like, burn it up, get rid of it. You don't need it. Next, what do you need? What is joy for you? What are you looking for? What do you really want? I need you to spend some time think about what do you actually want, and like I saw this meme going around about green flags, and I was like, whoa, yeah, we do spend a lot of time talking about red flags, but we don't know what we're talking about, but on green flags. What do I want my communication to look like? And if like, the words that we're speaking, coming back to the beginning of what we were talking about, like, our breath is medicine, the words that we speak are medicine, and all we gonna be talking about is red flags and how toxic everybody is, and like, is that the medicine that we really want? Is that like, more of the people who we want around us? Like, is that how we want to be in our community? Like calling everybody toxic all the time? Is that what it means to be a healer? Is that what it means to be medicine? Calling people out? Is that what it means to be radical, screaming in people's faces all the time? Is that what it means? And if not, then that means it's probably time for some solitude. And so like really think about, what do you want? Like how do you want to move in the world? What do you want to be in your medicine cabinet? What do you need to get rid of that you don't need no more?
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed that in my own life, when I was coming from that place of like everything is a red flag, or like trying to show all the red flags. There was so much anger, and I think where I've settled now is like with the medicine cabinet, we need to know the symptoms. So we need to address those things. We need to address, all the things we're seeing, because if we don't address them, they'll just fester, or it'll stagnate and they'll stay there. But then once we know what it is and we see it and we say, I see you, boo, like I got you, then what are we manifesting out? What are we creating? What is the medicine? And that's where the green flags come in. How do we practice being, safe, creating safe spaces? How do we practice listening? How do we practice embodiment? How do we practice all the things that we so desperately want to see reflected back at us? Because, all our experiences are mirrors for us. So, yeah.
That part has definitely been a very, very difficult for me to swallow, being in a space of everybody's out to get me and everybody's just so mean to me. Everybody's always throwing hexes at me. Man. that was really difficult for me to swallow, that people are doing these things to you, and it may not even be like things that happen that you did in this lifetime. It might be stuff that it might be other people's stuff. It might be stuff that your ancestors was doing. It might be stuff that you was doing in past lives. And like if you over it, you over people like throwing all these hexes and stuff at you. You have to do something about them past lives and about what those ancestors did. You need to heal them. You need to heal yourself. You need to heal your past. Like you are responsible. You want that to end, you got to do some work in you. You got to work on your shadows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, how do I'm trying to think of the way to say this that embraces like everyone's own experiences. I've been there. I've been, like you were saying, like definitely been that person, like, and sometimes I can still be like, man, it just feels like the world is out to get me. Like, can I get a break, yo? And it's not that there aren't systems and people who want you to feel that way. Those feelings are like, trust your instinct. Like you what you're seeing is real. But what you're also seeing and what you're experiencing is a lot of people who don't know how to deal and live into who they are. And so they project this idea of unworthiness, of shame onto you, so that, because like that's what they've been fed. So we're just feeding into each other. And what you'll find is if you disrupt that and mirror something back at them different, they won't know what to do with it. But it's like those seeds that you're planting. And as we do it more ourselves, as we practice what it means like to practice, like to practice self-care, which no, it doesn't just always mean like taking a bubble bath. It means like truly looking at yourself fully. And as we start to ask for help, and as we start to delve into lineages and just our stories and our truths, what it means to truly be us, me, goddess, you TBN, like you start to settle into this delicious space of realizing what they're marrying back is what they're mirroring isn't your mirror. And that's a fucking hard place to find. Like it takes motherfucking work. And it's amazing that we can now, like in our own experiences, can talk about it in this way. Because I like years ago, I don't think we could have been here.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. I'm like, and trying to figure out ways to like, talk to like, us way back then and people who might be dealing with what we were dealing with. It feels almost, I did that post about privilege and like my perspective now, like it feels like that. And I always want to remind myself of where we were at, because yeah. I mean, not go down that road.
I feel that. But I think also, like, I think when I think about how my poetry has changed, like over the years, when I was like deep in those places and always in pain and always in a state of rage, I found words to say to myself that were really gentle. I would start off these like poetry sets with singing in this like very like shaky voice, like you is love, you is beauty, and things like that. Like I would like be in a space that was very uncomfortable for myself, but like figuring out how to like make it softer, like just make everything softer so that I could take a breath, you know?
Yeah.
I think in those times of like deep sorrow and deep rage and unimaginable pain, like, you know, the thing that I was most looking for was like relief. Anything that like made something feel a little bit better, you know, that was the direction that I was going in. You know, not all those directions were healthy, you know. Like I definitely have come to terms with like ways that, you know, the ways that I was in such great amount of pain also, like, you know, contributed to me having addictive behaviors and me dealing with certain substances in ways that, you know, were creating addictive patterns within myself. um yeah. Yeah, the having, you know, having illness in your medicine cabinet, like, you know, can potentially bring more illness. And so I think also it's very important to, you know, reach toward people who are like, yeah, you don't need that no more. You don't need that no more. And people who, like, you know, have done their own deep, 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 deep healing work. And you can see it, you know, you can see it, you know, their skin glows, they talk kindly to people, you know, they figured out how to have stability around them. You know, teachers who have lots of green flags, teachers who have all the green flags, you know,
Yeah.
they're not having, you know, tons of money problems anymore because they figured out, you know, how to organize their energy in a way that, you know, they have some stability, you know.
Yeah.
I think elders are so important, especially in this age of, like, you know, digital witches and things like that. You know, people are coming into these practices via the internet, and not necessarily all the elders are on the internet. And, you know, and they may also not be in our families, or our families may be too ill to, you know, really be in touch with this type of medicine at this moment. And, you know, this generation is a generation who's supposed to be remembering. So I think it's so important that people are finding, you know, their elders. They're finding people who can teach them. And, you know, and for me, like, I'm still like that's funny, my spirits are like, you better be very careful about how you say this next sentence. So I am an elder. I am an elder in a temple in South Africa. And I think, you know, some of the old stories that I have, that I continue to work through, is that, you know, like how I personified, you know, me being like a crying little puppy, like everybody is out to get me and such and such and such. And now at this point, you know, I have like moved through my training, I have moved through my healing work, and I have arrived at a place that I am an elder. I'm not old, you know, like in this body, and chronologically, I'm not very old, but I have done the work to remember who I am and who I have been in other lifetimes, and I walk with ancient spirits. And so I am an elder who also has elders, you know. If I'm
Elders need elders too. Elders need elders too. Speaking of ancient spirits, can you speak to the water spirits you walk with, and what does it feel like to, like, when it's like really copacetic with them, what it feels like to walk with them?
Yeah, all right. First, I'm gonna say water spirits are very secretive.
That's fair.
That's the first thing I'm gonna say. And we will see, you know, what I can say about it. Okay, you said when things are copacetic, what does it look like? All right, what does it look like when it's copacetic? It looks like the money is flowing, the creativity is flowing. I feel blessed and clean. You know, it feels like for people who live in places where you get a lot of rain, walking with water spirits can feel like you just had the most like triumphant day. No, not like that. Okay, you just had the horriblest day, and then you walk outside, and like it just starts thundering on you, and all this rain is just pouring, and your clothes is soaked all the way through, and like you're looking up at the sky, and you see all the lightning, and you're like, God damn, I'm so clean. all that shit that just happened to me, it don't even matter. I'm just so clean. Start dancing in the rain, dancing in the rain. You feel the rain as drum beats, as like all of these songs. Like you could feel the frequency of the song. Like that's what it's like walking with water spirits. Like, you know, what's black folks in the church talking about like they got the Holy Ghost, like that'd be some water spirits a lot of times.
Still, so you know what is the water spirit. Okay. Does it feel like anything inside the body? Like when you are in it, what does your body tell you?
I think it feels like when you're at like a concert hall and you feel like the bass of the speakers, but really gentle and like on the back of my body. So like on the back of my legs, like the frequency, like the doom, 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 but soft, like that type of feeling where it's like a sound is making a physical experience on your skin. And then it also feels like it moves like water. And in that, it is like this space of all of my emotions to flow into this like reservoir behind me, behind my legs, you know, kind of surrounding me. And I think some of the biggest lessons that I learned from my water spirits are around like being calm and being observant, you know, to my own emotions, to the people around me. Remembering that, you know, part of my experience isn't human, you know, is other life other life forms, you know, other beings, otherworldly. Like, you know, I am this experience that I'm experiencing now is not all of it, you know. It's not all of experience, you know. My soul has not always been on this planet, you know, etc., etc. Some stuff that gets like esoteric out there.
Yeah. Mm. So that doom doom feeling, how do you radiate that outward?
I think it shows up in how I don't always want to talk when I teach about dreaming. So when people take the dream classes with me, there are videos that people watch of me moving and channeling, and I work with this beautiful videographer and editor to create these videos that are a ceremony. And then I'll take, you know, little bullet points and make like, you know, PDFs and things like that that explain some of the steps. Um, but yeah, sometimes words really fall short, you know. The human experience sometimes is a little bit limited. Um, when it also exists on this planet, the experiences of those who like are living in the water all the time, you know, the experiences of the mountains, the experiences of the rivers, the experiences of all the animals, like the way we experience and interpret and process and like expel information is not the only way. I like low key don't even remember what your question was because I'm like, did I answer your question?
You did. And like water, it doesn't always have to have words, like you were saying. It doesn't have to have words. But I will need you to use your words for this next question because it's super important. So, what are you currently offering and working on, and how can we, you know, experience some of your classes and workshops?
Yeah, so I like to be organized. I have a lot of Capricorn in my chart, so I've been working on organization. So the major ways are through my divination ceremonies, and then the other way is to enroll in dream school. So I'll talk about the divination ceremonies first. So there are 5 different ceremonies that I do that are they're ceremonies that I have curated for different types of experiences that all have pieces of the different traditions that I'm trained in and also that my ancestors have been trained in. So go from, they have like an increasing intensity. So they begin with bone divinations, and I'll either do them with folks for half an hour or for 60 minutes. And so a bone divination is the use of sacred objects to, for me to be able to read. So cast them and then read them to give information about the weather on someone's current path. So those are, very informational. Everything that I do has a layer of energy work and a layer of clearing work, because that's, that's what is in my natural medicine cabinet, detoxifying and clearing, because that's what the planet needs. That's what we need. We need, to be able to do clearing. So even having a conversation with me, if I am in my power and in my wheelhouse, that's what I am always offering. And so the next level is the energy clearing and divination sessions. And so that some of the frameworks of that come from Reiki or energy healing or laying hands, different cultural practices around energy healing. And then also, because I am a medium, I am able to, see all of these things from your spirits and my spirits. I can see them, hear them, touch them, feel them, taste them. It's a very full sensory experience. So whatever ways that a person needs to hear those messages comes through those sessions. And oftentimes those sessions have a lot of singing in them. And doing energy clearing through singing. And then I give a lot of information. So those sessions usually are about an hour and a half long. The next step up is a spirit cleansing. So that's, someone has identified that there's some spirit that's wreaking havoc, in their life, in their home, in their body, etc. And then we are, doing some sacred diets. We are, getting some ideas of what were the vulnerabilities that allowed that spirit to wreak havoc, to attach, to stay around for so long. And we're also getting rid of the spirit, and then building up some tools of protection to fill in some of those vulnerabilities, so that a similar type spirit can't attach again. And then the last one is Femba, which is a South African ceremony that it really opens up a lot of possibilities to do healing work across many years of time and across very distant places. So yeah, that one's really the cosmic level healing. So those are all of the divination ceremonies that I offer, which is totally a lot. And so I definitely recommend that people schedule a call with me so we can figure out which one do you need based on what's going on. And those calls are free. People can sign up. Usually I do calls during the weekdays, 15-minute, quick call. We can figure out what's going on and then, get people scheduled for a session. I also take payment plans for those fees, etc. I also have a bartering, work trade application on the website as well if folks don't have the financial resources at the moment. And then the other thing that we do is the dream school. So some of the dream school is really learning how to do some of those ceremonies, but in much more expanded ways. So it's not like an hour lesson. So some of the dream school classes are for 6 months. Sometimes they're for 12 weeks. So those are more of a time-based commitment to be able to learn how to embody some of these practices that allow you to be like constantly cleaning your space, learning how to listen to your ancestors, learning how to, understand dreaming as divination, as meditation, as rest work, all of those things. So the classes that I teach are, so the most accessible class is the flow movement meditation, which is every Thursday. And we go through practices that are similar to Qigong and different frameworks of energy healing. And we also will do it to like music with a beat. So like it's not like sit and meditate. It's like we're gonna like move and meditate, depending on how I'm feeling. We might be sweating and meditating. And then there's Equinox Dreaming Awake, which I offer 2 times a year, a 12-week course. And then there's Dreaming Awake One-on-One, which is 6 months. And I work with you one-on-one to figure out how to dream with your ancestors. And there's other stuff too, but those are the main ones.
Well, I will have links to your website and your PayPal in the show notes. But this has been opening. This has opened some things for me, and I hope it opens things for others. You have this. You ride along with the Ocotillo and the water spirits. You are a water spirit, that deep underground power, and it really shows through. So thank you for sharing space with me and Sunseed today.
Bokoza.
All right. Well, take care. Is there anything else you want to say, actually, before?
I feel like I should have prepared some promo type thing. Yeah, I mean, I will say, I am an elder. I have all this training, but like, hit me up. Like, I'm also like, like, schedule a call with me if you have questions. Like, I'm really about that. This stuff is not scary. This is our oral history. This is our culture, and I am really about creating access points so that you can understand, what's happening, and like so that you have preparation, before you enter into studying, who you are, who you have been, who your ancestors have been.
Well, what? All right. Well, thank you, TBN. It's been amazing. It really has. Very grounding.
I'm glad. Thank you for having me on.
And now for the final guided meditation by TBN, Ancestor Aster. Enjoy.
Remember your breath is medicine. Remember your breath cleans.
Fully. Allow the aster with its purple petals and yellow center, or yellow
Breathe.
petals,
Remember your breath is
white
medicine.
petals and yellow center. Allow the aster smoke
Remember your breath is medicine.
to cleanse your space, to remind you what it is to speak your truth.
Remember
All dreams
your
are
breath is
birthed
medicine.
from the sleep. All of the seeds are birthed from dreams. We are in a cycle, a spiral, a continuation from before and the after. Breathe into what you feel,
Remember your breath is medicine.
into what you desire. Allow the aster to clear your throat chakra, to clear your voice, to allow you to remember the pleasure that you have always been seeking, the pleasure and joy of being a child, the pleasure and joy of endless sunlight, the pleasure and joy of knowing that you always have
Breathe more deeply.
the pleasure and joy of all.
Breathe more deeply. Breathe. Teach us how to
Allow the aster to be your friend. Welcome the ancestors who are within the aster. The ancestors, the plants, they hold our stories. They remember our medicine. Breathe deeply into the aster collected on the mountain. Allow yourself to have strong voice in dreams, strong voice in waking around. Be unto you who you wish to be. Give yourself your dreams. Allow yourself to be.
Breathe again, be your medicine, breathe.